In a world where time itself was a fragile, ticking heartbeat, one boy's courage would change everything. Kael, a humble orphan with a gift for fixing broken things, never imagined he'd hold the key to saving his city, or that he'd become the guardian of time itself. But when the great clock began to slow and shadows crept into the streets, Kael discovered that even the smallest hands could turn the gears of destiny. This is the tale of a boy who dared to face the void, not for glory, but for the love of a city that had forgotten his name. In the heart of a vast, mechanical land stood the City of Gears, a place where time was measured not by the sun or moon, but by the rhythmic ticking of colossal clock towers. The city was a marvel of engineering, with streets made of polished brass and buildings that whirred and clicked like living machines. But beneath its gleaming surface, the city was dying. The great clock, the source of all time in the kingdom, was slowing down, and no one knew why. Kael, a young orphan with a knack for fixing broken things, lived in the shadows of the city. He spent his days tinkering with discarded clockwork toys and dreaming of a life beyond the slums. One night, as he wandered the empty streets, he noticed something strange, a tiny, golden key lying in the gutter. It glowed faintly, as if alive, and seemed to hum with a mysterious energy. Kael picked it up, and the moment he did, the world around him froze. The ticking of the clock stopped, and the city fell into an eerie silence. Kael stared at the key in his hand, his heart pounding. The glow intensified, and a voice, soft but commanding, echoed in his mind. Kael, you have been chosen. The great clock is failing, and only you can restore it. Kael's eyes widened. Me? But I'm just a tinkerer. I don't know anything about the great clock. The voice replied, the key will guide you. Trust in its power, and in yourself. Suddenly, the key began to pull him forward, as if leading him somewhere. Kael hesitated, but the thought of the city crumbling into timelessness spurred him on. He followed the key through the frozen streets, past statues of people mid-step and birds suspended in midair. The key led him to a hidden door in the base of the tallest clock tower. The door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. Kael descended the staircase, the golden key glowing brighter with each step. At the bottom, he found himself in a vast chamber filled with gears, springs, and whirring machines. In the center of the room stood a massive, mechanical figure, a clockwork guardian. Its body was made of polished brass, and its eyes glowed with a soft, blue light. The guardian turned to Kael and spoke in a deep, resonant voice. Who dares enter the heart of time? Kael held up the golden key. I'm Kael. The key brought me here. I need to fix the great clock. The guardian studied him for a moment, then nodded. The key has chosen wisely. But be warned, Kael, the path ahead is fraught with danger. To restore the great clock, you must find the 3 lost cogs of time. Each cog is hidden in a different realm, and each realm will test you in ways you cannot imagine. The guardian activated a portal, and Kael stepped through, finding himself in a strange, dreamlike world. The realm of forgotten memories was a place where time flowed backward. Kael saw glimpses of his own past, his parents, whom he barely remembered, and the day he was left at the orphanage. The air was thick with sadness, and the ground was littered with broken clocks and faded photographs. As Kael wandered, he was confronted by a shadowy figure, a reflection of himself, but older and bitter. Why bother, the figure sneered. You'll never fix the great clock. You're just a nobody. Kael's heart ached, but he stood tall. I may be a nobody, but I'm not giving up. The shadow dissolved, and a glowing cog appeared in its place. Kael picked it up, feeling a surge of hope. The second realm was a stark contrast to the first. The realm of endless tomorrows was a place of infinite possibilities, where time raced forward at breakneck speed. Kael saw visions of the future, himself as a celebrated inventor, the city thriving once more. But the visions kept changing, each one more dazzling than the last. It was overwhelming, and Kael felt himself getting lost in the possibilities. A voice whispered, "Stay here. You can have any future you want." Kael hesitated, tempted by the thought of a perfect life. But then he remembered the city, frozen and silent. "No," he said firmly. "The future isn't something you wait for, it's something you build." The visions faded, and the second cog appeared, glowing with a steady light. The final realm was the most dangerous, the realm of the timeless, a place where time did not exist. The landscape was a chaotic jumble of frozen moments, with fragments of the past, present, and future colliding in a dizzying display. Kael felt disoriented, as if he were being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. A figure emerged from the chaos, a woman made of shimmering light. "I am the keeper of time," she said. "To claim the final cog, you must answer this question: what is the true nature of time?" Kael thought for a moment, then replied, "Time is a gift. It's not about how much you have, but what you do with it." The keeper smiled, and the final cog appeared in her hand. "Well said, Kael. You have proven yourself worthy." Kael returned to the Clockwork Guardian with all 3 cogs. The Guardian placed them into the great clock, and the chamber filled with a deafening roar as the gears began to turn. The city above came back to life, the clocks ticking in perfect harmony. Kael felt a surge of pride as he watched the city awaken from its frozen slumber. The Guardian turned to him. "You have done well, Kael. But remember, time is a fragile thing. It is up to you to protect it." Kael nodded, clutching the golden key. He knew his journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt like he belonged, not just in the city, but in the grand tapestry of time itself. As Kael emerged from the clock tower, he was greeted by the bustling sounds of the city. The people, unaware of what had happened, went about their daily lives. But Kael noticed something strange, a small, hidden door in the side of the tower that he hadn't seen before. The golden key in his hand began to glow, urging him to investigate. Inside, he found a workshop filled with intricate clockwork devices and blueprints. At the center of the room was a dusty journal. Kael opened it and discovered it belonged to the original clockmaker, the creator of the great clock. The journal spoke of a hidden danger, a force known as the Void, which sought to consume time itself. The clockmaker had created the cogs of time to protect the kingdom, but the Void had grown stronger over the years. Kael's heart raced as he read the journal. The Void was not just a myth, it was real, and it was coming. The clockmaker had left behind a warning: only the keeper of the key can stop the Void, but they must first unlock the secrets of time. Kael realized that his journey was far from over. He needed to learn more about the Void and how to defeat it. As he left the workshop, he noticed a faint shadow creeping across the city. The air grew colder, and the ticking of the clock seemed to slow. The Void was already here, and it was testing the city's defenses. Kael sought out the Clockwork Council, a group of the city's most skilled engineers and inventors. They were skeptical at first, but when Kael showed them the golden key and the journal, they agreed to help. Together, they devised a plan to strengthen the great clock and prepare for the Void's arrival. But not everyone was on their side. A mysterious figure known as the Shadow Mechanic had been sabotaging their efforts, spreading fear and doubt among the people. Kael knew he had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Kael tracked the Shadow Mechanic to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. Inside, he found a labyrinth of gears and traps, designed to keep intruders out. But Kael's knowledge of clockwork allowed him to navigate the maze and confront the Shadow Mechanic. To his surprise, the Shadow Mechanic was not a villain, but a former member of the Clockwork Council who had been corrupted by the Void. "You don't understand," the mechanic said. "The Void is inevitable. We must embrace it, or be destroyed." Kael refused to accept this and, with the help of the Golden Key, managed to free the mechanic from the Void's influence. As Kael and the mechanic returned to the city, the Void launched its first attack. Shadows poured into the streets, freezing everything in their path. The great clock's gears groaned under the strain, and the city's defenses began to fail. Kael rallied the people, using the golden key to amplify the clock's power. Together, they managed to push back the shadows, but it was only a temporary victory. The void was growing stronger, and Kael knew they needed a more permanent solution. The clockmaker's journal mentioned a lost workshop hidden deep within the city, where the original cogs of time had been forged. Kael and the mechanics set out to find it, hoping to uncover the secrets of the void's weakness. The workshop was hidden beneath the city's oldest clock tower, accessible only through a series of secret passages. Inside, they found ancient blueprints in a mysterious device known as the Chronoforge, capable of creating new cogs of time. The Chronoforge was a massive, intricate machine, powered by the golden key. Kael and the mechanic worked tirelessly to repair it, but they soon realized they needed a rare material known as temporal ore to activate it. The ore could only be found in the temporal mines, a dangerous place where time itself was unstable. The temporal mines were a labyrinth of twisting tunnels, where time flowed unpredictably. One moment, Kael felt like he had been walking for hours, the next, it was as if no time had passed at all. The mines were also home to strange, time-warped creatures that attacked without warning. After a series of close calls, Kael and the mechanic managed to find a vein of temporal origin. But as they collected it, the ground began to shake, and the tunnels started to collapse. They barely escaped with their lives, carrying the precious ore back to the city. With the temporal ore in hand, Kael and the mechanic activated the Chronoforge. The machine roared to life, its gears spinning faster and faster until it created a new cog of time. This cog was different from the others, it glowed with a pure, golden light, and seemed to hum with the power of eternity. Kael knew this cog was the key to defeating the void, but he also knew it would come at a cost. The clockmaker's journal warned that using the cog would require a great sacrifice. As the void launched its final attack, Kael inserted the new cog into the great clock. The city was bathed in a golden light, and the shadows were pushed back. But the effort drained Kael's strength, and he collapsed, his body fading into light. The people of the city mourned their hero, but the mechanic refused to give up. Using the Chronoforge, he managed to bring Kael back, though the process left Kael with no memory of his past. Kael awoke in a world he no longer recognized. The city was thriving, and the great clock ticked with a steady rhythm. But Kael felt lost, as if a part of him was missing. The mechanic explained what had happened and gave Kael the golden key, hoping it would help him remember. As Kael held the key, fragments of his memories began to return. He knew his journey wasn't over, there were still mysteries to uncover and dangers to face. But for now, he was content to live in the city he had saved, knowing that time was once again on their side. Kael wandered the streets of the City of Gears, the golden key clutched tightly in his hand. Though the city was alive and thriving, he felt like a stranger in his own home. Fragments of memories flashed in his mind, his parents, the orphanage, the frozen city, but they were fleeting, like whispers in the wind. The mechanic had told him about his sacrifice, but Kael couldn't remember any of it. One day, while tinkering with a broken clock, Kael noticed a faint engraving on the golden key, to unlock the past, seek the mirror of moments. Intrigued, he asked the mechanic about it. The mechanic's eyes widened. The mirror of moments is an ancient artifact, said to reveal the truth of one's memories. But it's hidden in the Clockwork Catacombs, a place no one has entered in centuries. Kael and the mechanic ventured into the Clockwork Catacombs, a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city filled with ancient machinery and traps. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with gears that hadn't turned in years. As they navigated the tunnels, they encountered a series of puzzles designed to test their ingenuity. One puzzle required them to align a series of gears to open a door. Kael's hands moved instinctively, as if he had done this before. The door creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in a soft, blue light. At the center of the room stood the Mirror of Moments, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. Kael approached the mirror, his reflection staring back at him. But as he looked closer, the reflection began to change. He saw himself as a child, playing with his parents. He saw the day they disappeared, leaving him at the orphanage. And he saw the moment he picked up the golden key, freezing the city in time. The mirror's voice echoed in the chamber. To reclaim your memories, you must face the pain of your past. Are you ready, Kael? Kael took a deep breath and nodded. The mirror's surface rippled, and Kael was pulled into a whirlwind of memories, each one more vivid than the last. Kael relived the happiest moments of his childhood, his parents' laughter, the warmth of their home. But he also relived the pain of losing them, the loneliness of the orphanage, and the fear of being forgotten. Tears streamed down his face as the memories overwhelmed him. When he finally emerged from the mirror, he felt a weight lift from his chest. The memories were his again, and with them came a renewed sense of purpose. I remember now, he said to the mechanic. I remember everything. As Kael and the mechanic returned to the surface, they noticed something strange. The city's clocks were ticking slower, and a faint shadow crept across the streets. The void was returning, stronger than before. Kael realized that his sacrifice had only delayed the inevitable. The void was a force that could not be destroyed, only contained. The mechanic suggested using the chronoforge to create a permanent barrier, but Kael knew it would require more than just temporal origin. They needed the Heart of Time, a mythical artifact said to be hidden in the temporal spire, a tower that existed outside of time itself. The temporal spire was a towering structure that seemed to stretch into infinity. Its walls were made of shimmering glass, and its gears turned in impossible directions. Kael and the mechanic entered the spire, only to find that time inside flowed differently. One moment, they were climbing endless stairs, the next, they were standing at the top, facing a massive, glowing door. The door was guarded by a figure made of light, the keeper of the spire. Only those who understand the true nature of time may enter, the keeper said. Kael thought back to his journey and replied, time is not just a force, it's a gift, a chance to make a difference. The keeper smiled and opened the door. Inside the spire, Kael found the Heart of Time, a glowing, crystalline orb that pulsed with the rhythm of the universe. As he reached for it, the void manifested in the room, its shadowy form twisting and writhing. You cannot stop me, it hissed. Time belongs to me. Kael clutched the Heart of Time, feeling its power surge through him. Time belongs to everyone, he said firmly. And I won't let you take it. The heart glowed brighter, and the void recoiled, its form dissolving into nothingness. Kael returned to the city with the Heart of Time, but he knew what had to be done. To create a permanent barrier against the void, the heart would need to be fused with the great clock. But the process would require a living soul to act as its anchor. Kael didn't hesitate. I'll do it, he said. The mechanic tried to stop him, but Kael was resolute. This is my purpose. I was chosen for this. As the heart was fused with the clock, Kael felt his body dissolve into light, becoming one with the machinery. The city was saved, and the void was sealed away. The great clock ticked with a steady, eternal rhythm, and the people of the City of Gears celebrated their newfound peace. But Kael was gone, his sacrifice remembered only by the mechanic and a few others. Unbeknownst to them, Kael's essence lived on within the clock, watching over the city as its eternal guardian. He could feel the passage of time, the lives of the people, and the heartbeat of the city itself. Though he was no longer human, he found peace in his new role. Years passed, and the story of Kael became a legend. The mechanic built a monument in his honor, a statue of a young boy holding a golden key, standing proudly in the city square. Children would gather around the statue, listening to tales of the hero who saved time itself. But the mechanic knew the truth, Kael's journey wasn't over. The void was still out there, waiting for its chance to return. And one day, when the city needed him most, Kael would awaken once more. One stormy night, the great clock began to slow. The void's shadow crept into the city, and the people grew fearful. The mechanic rushed to the clock, praying for a miracle. As he placed his hand on the machinery, he felt a familiar presence. Kael's voice echoed in his mind. "I'm here. I'll always be here." The clock's gears began to turn faster, and the void was pushed back once more. The city was safe, but the mechanic knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Kael's essence settled back into the clock, watching over the city once more. He realized that his journey was part of a greater cycle, a never-ending battle to protect time itself. But he was no longer afraid. He had found his purpose, and he knew he would never be alone. As the city slept, the great clock ticked on, its rhythm steady and eternal. And somewhere, deep within its gears, Kael smiled, knowing that time was in good hands. Courage lies in the smallest of hearts. Kael's journey teaches us that bravery isn't about being the strongest or the most powerful, it's about standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. True heroes are often those who go unnoticed, quietly making a difference. Time is a gift, not a guarantee. The story reminds us to cherish every moment, for time is fleeting and precious. It's not about how much time we have, but how we choose to use it. Every second is an opportunity to make a difference. Sacrifice is the ultimate act of love. Kael's willingness to give up his life for the city shows that the greatest acts of love often require selflessness. True heroism isn't about recognition, it's about doing what's necessary to protect those we care about. The past shapes us, but doesn't define us. Kael's journey through his memories teaches us that our past, no matter how painful, doesn't have to dictate our future. We have the power to learn, grow, and create a new path. Unity and hope can overcome any darkness. The story emphasizes the importance of coming together in the face of adversity. Even in the darkest times, hope and unity can light the way forward.